Right, let's move on. We've got Simon Hughes on the line to help us to preview tonight's massive game between Liverpool and Roma. Simon, we'll talk about the current game itself, but like these clubs have a proper European history. The European Cup final that they played in is a storied match for what happened on the field. It's also, unfortunately, a match that had repercussions off the field for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, I think this game is probably the more interesting semi-final, and Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, because it does, you know, bear so much weight of history. I think if you look back to 1984 when Roma last got to the European Cup final, as it was then, you know, it was a final that was played in their home city for their first European Cup final, which they lost. For Liverpool, you know, Liverpool were a very successful European dominant force at that time, and it wasn't necessarily surprised that Liverpool went there and won, but when you actually look at the set of circumstances behind the match itself, and the atmosphere, for Liverpool to go and win there was pretty spectacular, really. I mean, you know, it was an away game. I mean, I know Chelsea went to Munich in 2012 and won. But the world was a little bit different in 1984 compared to 2012, I think. So, yeah, I mean, obviously before the game, Liverpool supporters were subjected to, you know, quite a few difficulties on entering the city. There was, you know, stabbings and slashings and so on. And then during the game and after the game, it continued. So at that time, you know, that the game didn't get, the violence and problems around the game didn't get as much coverage in the British press as it did in the Italian press. But, you know, I think the focus really tonight is the football. I mean, I know memories live long and everything else. But, you know, both clubs have been stars of European success for you know, different amounts of time, but relatively long periods of time. And, you know, I think there's just, you know, this absolute desire, you know, from both clubs to try and get through.
Just one final point on the '84 game. There's that legendary story about the Liverpool players in the tunnel. They kind of start clicking their feet and the studs on the concrete start making a noise, and they realise that it's the same rhythm of a song, and they start singing, and it turns out Cliona was saying it's a Chris Rea song.
Chris Rea song, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
And I kind of always wondered, it's like, well, but this is like one of the greatest football teams of all time. Why would they have felt the need to not be intimidated? And ultimately the game is only a draw, but you make a really excellent point. It was an away match.
I think it just sums up the attitude of the Liverpool team at the time, and the kind of the dynamic and the relationship between the players. I mean, they were standing there in the tunnel waiting to go out, you know, amidst, you know, I was speaking to David Hodgson, who was a substitute that night, and he was right at the back of the tunnel, and he couldn't actually see outside. It was just the smoke was billowing into the tunnel. And, you know, Liverpool players could sense that the Roma players were very nervous, obviously, that it was a game in their home city for all the reasons I explained. You know, the pressure was all on them, despite them really, in a sporting sense, being underdogs, I guess. You know, and David Hodgson claimed that it was his idea. Anyway, he was the first one that started singing the Chris Rea song. It's just totally unnerved all the Roma players. They were like, you know, how can you, you know, they were like, why are they singing this unusual pop song? And you know, it calmed the Liverpool players down. And there's a great image of Graham Souness leading the team out with Bruce Grobb. Souness, you know, has a steely determination, and you know, if you look at his face, you know that Liverpool aren't going to lose the game. But then meanwhile, they've got Bruce Grobbelaar behind, who's just laughing at the whole scene. It's just surreal. You know, if Liverpool were to lose that game and do the same thing now, you know, I think people would be accusing them of unprofessionalism. But that's just the way that Liverpool team was, you know, with the characters and kind of the inner belief and the way they dealt with these sort of challenges.
The characters and the inner belief of the current team, at the very top of that tree is Jurgen Klopp. He has been every inch the messianic leader that the club thought he would potentially become, and he has fully lived up to the pre-arrival hype and has overcome some minor difficulties along the way to definitely reach a point now where he has a symbiosis with the club.
Yeah, I mean, I think he still has to deliver something, palpable in terms of, winning a trophy. But, for me, I've realised this season, that on a personal level, football really is a lot about hope. Just that hope that you can actually achieve something. I mean, Liverpool have travelled a long way in a short period of time under Jurgen Klopp. It's easy to forget that they got to a Europa League final his first season. I think there's been a bit change in his approach since then. I think, listening to him going to the press conferences, listening to him talk in that period 2 years ago, I think he was just kind of, he was accepting that this wasn't his Liverpool team yet. Anything, any sort of progression was a bonus, really. Whereas now you listen to him talk, and I think you genuinely sense that he believes now that this team is capable of doing some special things, and if Liverpool were to beat Roma, I mean, I think Roma are a very good team, and I think it's going to be much harder for Liverpool to get through than some people think. I mean, they haven't conceded a goal at home in Europe all season. They've they played some top quality opposition: Atletico Madrid, Chelsea, Barcelona, Shakhtar Donetsk, all teams that can, on their day put 2 or 3 past any opposition. So they clearly got, the right idea defensively. But across 2 legs, I just the forward line that he's assembled, Jurgen Klopp, I just don't see how it doesn't score enough goals to get through. I think it's a slightly different European scene to what Liverpool exited in 9-10, when a lot of the football Champions League winners were kind of often the best defensive team. I think now it's the most attacking team, and Liverpool really are in the top 2 or 3 attacking teams in Europe, I think, at this moment. I know people say there's question marks over the defence after West Brom, but there were quite a few changes made there. I think that they'll be back to full strength tonight, and yeah, I think he's totally given the city, Jurgen Klopp, that belief again that anything is possible.
That's the thing about being a football fan, being a sports fan, really, that we all need a little bit of a sense that we're not wasting our time here, that we're not watching.
It's a great line. That's a great line. Football is about hope. Sport is about hope.
Yeah, that's why we love it.
Absolutely.
Simon, what's going to happen? What do you expect to be they're going to score more goals than Roma over the 2 legs? We've been reading a lot about how familiar Mo Salah will be to the opposition and how they're going to physically target him. Klopp's like, yeah, go ahead, and then he'll punish you in a football sense. What's going to happen? How will this game tactically play out?
Well, it really is an intriguing game, I think, because we like to bracket teams from different nations in a certain way, and everybody says, well, Roma, Italian team, they're going to know how to defend. I don't think they've actually got any Italian defenders in the defence at the moment. They're made up of Brazilians and Serbians and a Greek defender. And obviously they've got an Italian manager who's quite inexperienced at this level. This is a new territory for Di Francesco, the Roma manager, which is where I think Klopp has the advantage. I think he's obviously been in these situations over the years. But that said, I actually think if you look further up the pitch, Roma have a little bit more experience than Liverpool. Somebody like Daniel De Rossi has played in big European matches, big international matches over the years. They do have quite a lot of experience out the team. So it's an interesting. They're both at different stages. I think the Roma is slightly, as I've mentioned before, the defensive record is impressive. Liverpool are an attacking team. Ultimately, I just think that Liverpool, if Liverpool can get a first leg lead, of any kind, not even though the Roma have knocked out Barcelona and Shakhtar over 2 legs, haven't scored an away goal, which was crucial in both legs. I just think if Liverpool take any lead to Roma, I think it's going to be very difficult for Roma, as Man City found out, to kind of claw that back, because Liverpool's counter-attacking abilities are so devastating. Of course, there are other issues. Keeping 11 men on the pitch, I think that could be decisive as well. I mean, that's one thing that Liverpool haven't had to deal with too often this season. But when they played Manchester City at the start of the season, they got a player sent off, and the way they play, they do need a full 11 men on the pitch. So I think over 2 legs, that sort of relatively small detail could be key.
2 last things I wanted to ask you about. One was Coutinho, the most expensive sub in the world, and how Klopp apparently was absolutely thrilled when Barcelona came in and made such an offer for Coutinho, because he kind of had apparently decided that Coutinho didn't really have a role in his starting 11. Is this true? Is this post-event rationalisation where he's like, look, my life is brilliant. That was the best gamble I ever made?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was quite to that level. I mean, I think that Klopp recognised last summer, with the players, in Mane, he wanted Mane, Firmino and Salah to be the front three. Over the last 2 or 3, 4 years, Coutinho has been one of those front three members. And, at the start of the season, he doctored his position slightly, although he had played in midfield more often towards the end of last season on occasion in some big games over the previous couple of years. But, I just think that Klopp, when he knows a player isn't with him, I think it's quite difficult for him to kind of rationalise how to stay with him in many ways. And I don't think he was desperate for him to go, but I think he accepted, well, if he wants to go, I'll find a solution, around this. And I think that's what separates him from previous Liverpool managers. He finds solutions where other managers don't. And he's certainly done that. Who would have said that this midfield that Liverpool have would be capable of not only supplying the chances for the number of chances that have actually increased for the forward line since Coutinho's left. So he finds solutions, Klopp, and I think that's why people relate to him, and he doesn't feel sorry for himself. He's in control of every situation. It's certainly not like kind of trying to be smart after the event. I think from Klopp, if he had his way, would have wanted to keep him, because clearly he's a very talented player, and managers don't want to sell talented players, but ultimately he's found a way around it, and they haven't really missed him at all. No,
and you get the Virgil van Dijk money in cash in a Brinks Allied truck, thanks very much, from Barcelona, and you go and spend it, and I think the team is much better for having Van Dijk in it. One last thing I wanted to talk to you about was the story of the Roma player Agostino Di Bartolomeo, who I know you've been writing about. This is another tragic adjunct to the 1984 game. Yeah,
well, I think it just emphasises just again, how big a game that particular match was for Roma. I mean, Di Bartolomeo was the Rome captain from Rome, playing the European final as his home city. Within 12 months, he'd actually left Roma, went up to sign for Milan. There was a fallout after that final. Whispers of rumours about certain players not wanting to take penalties in the shootout. He supposedly, this has never been confirmed, but fell out with 1 or 2 players, and this led to the departure from his hometown club. Anyway, obviously 10 years later, on the very date, on the anniversary of the game in Rome, he killed himself. And a lot of people have written about this in Italy, and the general consensus is, that it's not insignificant that he chose that particular date, although he had other problems at that time. So, it's a very sad story. One that I know people in Rome it still lingers on why. But it just shows you that the impact of football and how important people view it, and how people react to it when defeats like this happen. I mean, ultimately, Bill Shankly said it is more than life and death, but it isn't really, if we're being honest.
Yeah, no, for sure. Simon, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.